Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Riya Gandhi and I'm back again with yet another video on our post-colonial theory series. In the last few videos, we dived deep into understanding what post-colonial theory is. We talked about one particular figure in detail, and that is Edward Said and his major theoretical concept of post-colonial theory, and that is Orientalism. Not just that, but we also applied Orientalism to one of the most canonical works in English literature, and that was Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. In today's video, we are going to shift gears and we are going to talk about another most important figure in post-colonial theory, and that is Homi K. Bhabha. If Said talked about how the colonizer represented the colonized, Bhabha talked about how those representations affect even today, how cultures mix today, and how power is never as stable as it seems today. So, make sure you stick around till the end of this video and don't forget to make notes. When I'm talking about Homi K. Bhabha, he is undoubtedly one of the most towering figures in post-colonial theory. He's often mentioned alongside figures like Edward Said and Gayatri Chakraborty Spivak, often considered to be the Holy Trinity, right? Now, he was born in Mumbai. He sort of also taught at Harvard University, where he has served as the Anne Rothenberg Professor of Humanities. But when we are specifically talking about his contribution to post-colonial theory, we also need to understand that he was extremely influenced by post-structuralist thought. When we are talking about post-structuralism or post-structuralist thought, we need to understand that it challenged the authority of language, right? It sort of broke away from that. And based on these ideas, you have Homi K. Bhabha sort of talking about the colonial power relations and how they created unstable cultural identities, right? How colonized people sort of resisted through subtle and often different, right? In a subtle yet very unconventional manner. Having said that, we also need to understand that Homi K. Bhabha was very much influenced by three major post-structuralist, postmodernist thinkers. And they were Jacques Derrida, Jacques Lacan, Michel Foucault, and definitely Edward Said. Right? So based upon their ideas and drawing from their insights in the field of post-colonial theory, in the field of post-structuralism, postmodernism, or even psychoanalysis for that matter, you have Homi K. Bhabha talking about very revolutionary concepts in post-colonial theory. Right? So one of Bhabha's major contributions is to challenge the simple binaries that we often assume in colonial storytelling. A lot of times in colonial discourse, and this is something that we also see in Edward Said's theory of Orientalism, that there is this weird divide between us versus them, the colonizer versus the colonized, right? Sort of creating and perpetuating colonial stereotypes, right? So Bhabha says that these categories, right, they never really hold up. What happens today is that cultures meet. What you see today happening is multiculturalism. People from different backgrounds, from colonies or the people who colonized, they meet together, they stay at the same place together, they talk to each other, they exchange cultures even today, which produces hybrid identities. We are going to talk about hybridity later in this video, so stay tuned till that. Secondly, when we are talking about Bhabha and his contributions to post-colonial theory, we also need to understand that how he asked us to rethink what we mean by culture and difference. He says that culture is not something that is pure. It's not something that is static, right? It's continuously evolving, it's continuously changing, because we are meeting different people, right, from different cultures. Different cultures are meeting, right? And that's how you see new meanings being emerged. That's how you see new sort of identities being formed in the process, right? And not just that, I think from these ideas and these discussions, we also see the emergence of we also talk about diaspora and migration, right? So Bhabha's ideas have been also very influential in the development of the discourse of diaspora studies. So the idea behind, or the point behind talking about Bhabha's contributions to postcolonial theory is to understand that according to Bhabha, culture was never something that you can define so easily, right? According to him, culture cannot be defined so easily. It's something that is not static. It's something that's very dynamic. It continuously evolves over the period of time, and that's why you cannot understand the relationship between the colonizer and the colonized in the form of a binary like Edward Said did. There is a mixture of these two cultures, and we are living in this mixture today, right? So having said that, now let's move ahead with the video and talk about some of the major concepts that Bhabha provided in order to explain this. So the very first concept that we are going to take into consideration right now is hybridity. According to Bhabha, hybridity meant the blending of the colonizer as well as the colonized cultures. What does that mean? It does not just mean blending, it does not just mean mixing of these two cultures, but it means creating something new which unsettles the old colonial order. What does that mean? Let's understand this with the help of a very popular example, right? Most of us have watched, or most of us know about the Netflix series Never Have I Ever, right? In that series, you have the main character Devi, who switches between what sounds like the American cultural language and the Indian cultural language, right? So she uses English slang one moment, traditional Indian phrases the next, right? Now her identity is neither purely American nor she is purely Indian. It's a hybrid of both. And that's exactly the point. The point is that when you are talking about hybridity, according to Bhabha, it meant the emergence of new cultural forms. By this, Bhabha means to say that colonialism is not something that is just locked in the past, right? That colonies came and they sort of like colonized the lands in so and so century. No. He means to say that the impact of colonialism or colonialism still intrudes today in the present. It demands us to rethink our cross-cultural relations, to actually think about cross-cultural relations and how these cross-cultural relations are forming new hybrid cultural identities, right? So that's what he meant by hybridity. Now, while speaking of hybridity, we talked about how the colonizer and the colonized cultures meet, or where basically two different cultures, they meet together. There is this mixture creating new forms of identity. So this space, this discursive space wherein two different cultures meet is called as the third space. The third space is called as this in-between space. It's this in-between space, it's in this in-between space where cultures mix, meanings are negotiated. What does that mean? It means that there is an exchange of meanings when we are talking about two cultures meeting, right? One of the most interesting things about the third space is that it challenges the idea that culture is pure, or culture is authentic, or culture is static, right? It talks about how culture is evolving, how culture is something that you cannot sort of grasp with one definition or with one idea or with one perspective. It's that ambiguous space wherein you find two different cultural identities interacting with each other. The next most important term that was provided by Bhabha was enunciation. According to Bhabha, culture is not something that is pre-given. Culture is not something that is already provided to you, or is not something that is ready-made, right? Culture, according to Bhabha, is something that needs to be performed, is something that needs to be expressed, is something that needs to be spoken into being. And this act of performance, this act of expression of culture, of perpetuating culture through your actions, is what Bhabha has called enunciation, right? We enunciate on a daily basis. We express our cultural identities, our cultural differences on a daily basis without even knowing about it. Through this act of enunciation, what we are essentially doing is that we are establishing a cultural difference, right? We are establishing our cultural differences and how we navigate that and how we create our own space there. For example, let's talk about a stand-up comedian coming from an immigrant family. They are making jokes about their parents' accents. By doing this, the stand-up comedian is essentially voicing out their mixed cultural experiences. They are taking those cultural differences, be it in the form of their accent or the language, and turning them into humor. This is their way of creating new meaning and creating their own space between these two worlds. Right? So when we are talking about enunciation and what Bhabha meant by enunciation, it's basically this act of utterance. It's this act of expression of a culture, right? And it mostly takes place in this third space where we are sort of like navigating different cultural identities and interactions, cultural interactions, right? So please remember this, that according to Bhabha, culture is never pre-given. It's not something that is provided to you ready-made. It's only and only through enunciation that you establish your cultural identity, your cultural difference, right? Having said that, now let's move on to another most important concept provided by Bhabha, and that is ambivalence. According to Bhabha, colonial attitudes were full of contradictions. What does that mean? It basically means that on one hand, colonizers portrayed themselves as mentors, as bringing civilization or guidance to the colonies. But on the other hand, they also secretly feared the colonized as a potential threat or an outsider. It's a push and pull, right? It's a contradictory stance. So, in order to best understand this, let's take an example of Harry Potter, right? Most of us have watched Harry Potter, or most of us know about Harry Potter. And in one of the movies in the series, you have this house elf called as Dobby, right? Dobby is almost like a childlike servant. But what happens when he becomes aware of injustice and he tries to push back? There is this tension that you feel, right? Of caring yet also fearing. It's that quiet confidence that you see. It's also the fear that the colonizers had, that what if they understand their potential? What if they come to know about who they are or what their rights are in the first place? So according to Bhabha, when you talk about colonial discourse, it's never authoritative. It's always ambivalent. It depends on the colonized, but it also fears them in the second place, right? So understanding this concept of ambivalence, I believe, will not only help you in understanding the colonial discourse, or in order to and also help you understand the relationship between the colonizer as well as the colonized. It will also help you understand the capitalistic discourse today. the patriarchal discourse today, the gender-based discourse today. Because you see a lot of ambivalent, push and pull, contradictory stances wherein people do want to give you and help you understand your potential, but they also fear your potential. Right? So that's something to think about. And if you have any thoughts and opinions on it, please let me know in the comment section below. I'll be very happy to read them. Last but not the least, one of the most important theoretical concepts provided by Bhabha is mimicry. The term mimicry is also often asked in UGC NET English exam. The common understanding of this word is simple. It basically means to imitate someone. But how does this word percolate in the colonial discourse? According to Bhabha, when you talk about mimicry, it is basically how the colonized subjects, they try to mimic the colonizer's culture in terms of their language, in terms of their dressing, in terms of their behavior. Right? Now, the idea or the point behind this action of mimicking, it's twofold, especially in Bhabha's postcolonial discourse. The first is trying to reinforce the authority of the person, trying to reinforce the authority of the colonizers, because you want to be like them, you want to imitate, or you want to dress like them, you want to talk like them, you want to speak like them, you want to behave like them. You're reinforcing their identity specifically. But at the same time, you're also subtly mocking them. Think about the stand-up comedians. Think about their shows when they are imitating someone, when they are mimicking someone. They are actually making fun of that person. They are actually making fun of that section or community or whatever, right? Similarly, over here as well, the second understanding of mimicry is also wherein the colonized subjects are subtly trying to subvert the authority of the colonizers, right? So what are the twofold ideas or notions associated when we are talking about mimicry? The first one is they are actually or subtly trying to subvert the colonial authority. And secondly, it is to be like them. Right? So these are some of the most important theoretical concepts that we discussed, starting with hybridity, enunciation, third space, mimicry, ambivalence. Having said that, now let's move ahead with the video and talk about some of the most important works by Bhabha that are often asked in UGC NET English exam. The first one is The Location of Culture, that was published in 1994. It is a foundational text which introduces these theoretical concepts that we just talked about, including hybridity, mimicry, third space, etc. Then you have again Nation and Narration, a very, very important text often asked in Match the Following, right? It explores how nations are imagined through stories and myths. It challenges our idea about how we approach national identities, right? So these are some of the most important works that you should take a note of, especially if you're preparing for your UGC NET English exam. Now, having said that, we are very much convinced of Bhabha's contributions to the post-colonial discourse, how he sort of helped us rethink our understanding of the relationship between the colonizer as well as the colonized. Now, so far we discussed who Bhabha is, his contributions to post-colonial discourse, his theoretical concepts, his major works, his criticisms, etc. But have you ever asked why he still matters today? In a world of migration, globalization, multiculturalism, Bhabha's ideas actually help us understand and navigate different cultural identities, and as a result of which we understand identity politics, right? So from debates on citizenship to representation in Hollywood to immigrant voices on social media, Bhabha helps us or provides us with a language to describe these in-between identities, right? So to wrap it up, understand that if Edward Said talked about the representation of the East by the West and how the West imagined the East, Homi Bhabha shows us how the colonized talk back, right? It's not always through open rebellion. It's not always through revolution. It may be not in a violent manner. It's through mimicry. It's through hybridity. It's through creative imagination and negotiation, right? And perhaps that's the real power of post-colonial theory. It helps us see and understand that identity is something that is not fixed at all. Culture is something that is not static. It's not something that is authentic, but it's something that is constantly being remade. Identities are being remade. Cultures are continuously evolving in that third space between two different cultures. With this, we now come to an end of our video. I hope you are able to understand Homi Bhabha's complex theoretical concepts and it helped you in your UGC NET English preparation. If it did, please like, share and subscribe to my channel. And thank you so much for watching till the end. I'll see you in the next one.